Oh, the Biden administration really loves to play the blame game, right? Typical political style, just blame the other guy. And that's what they're doing. They're blaming the Trump administration for, of course, everything, including all this inflation. We're going to talk about that today. And we're also going to talk about how challenged the Democrats are, especially given that they've got no heir apparent. Kamala Harris just really bombed in France. I'll tell you, Americans, we're okay with accents provided they're real and authentic. But when you start using a fake accent, like a fake snooty accent in the Northeast or a Southern accent down South, or even a French accent when you're over there in France, that doesn't go over well. I've got the tape. You're going to want to hear it. Anyway, good to have you here, everyone. Quick reminder to subscribe to this channel or to download the full version, audio version of the podcast on Apple iTunes or on Spotify. It's good to have you here. Portions of the Trish Regan Show are brought to you by Immunity Armor Gold. It is the most advanced immunity boosting formula you can get in one single product. So go to immunityarmorgold.com, use promo code Trish10 to get 10% off. Again, immunityarmorgold.com, promo code Trish10. And I'll tell you this, you're going to need the promo code these days because darn inflation. It's like prices just keep going up, up, and away, right? But there's a reason for that. And apparently it's Donald Trump's fault, at least according to Ron Klain, the chief of staff for the Biden administration. He says, and I quote, "We inherited a mess from Donald Trump." Supply chain disaster. Of course, the problem with the worldwide pandemic. Interesting how he's blaming that one on Trump. Here's the deal. You know what? You also inherited some really good economic policy, which if you had actually just kept going, Mr. Klain and President Biden, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in. But because you decided that somehow it was government's job to provide for everybody via more and more stimulus, well, we are in the situation we're in. The Fed, by the way, is not blameless in any of this either, because perhaps under pressure from the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, you've got Jerome Powell keeping the printing presses going as long as he has. I know they're scaling back, maybe, sort of now, but I'm telling you, this stuff is not transitory. Even just the word transitory, if you think about it, is really offensive because it's kind of a sophisticated way of saying temporary. But they have to say transitory, right? To make it sound like so official and so economic. It's not transitory. It's not temporary. It's here. Inflation is here because that's actually what happens when you print money like this. The good thing is that there are some adults in Washington. I keep going back to Senator Joe Manchin because he's just done a phenomenal job really standing up for his values, his beliefs, and those beliefs and values of his constituents. And he doesn't like all this spending. And this inflation number basically stopped him in his tracks. And there are now reports, including one in Axios, saying that he's looking to put the brakes on any kind of stimulus, any kind of $1.7 trillion stimulus that the Democrats might want to be getting into play, especially before 2022. Anyway, he's tweeting now, by all accounts, the threat posed by record inflation to the American people is not transitory, smart guy, and instead getting worse. From the grocery store to the gas pump, he writes, Americans know the inflation tax is real, and DC can no longer ignore the economic pain Americans feel every day. Indeed, it is real, and the economic pain is real in light of all of these escalating prices. I mean, natural gas up 28%. That's what I heat my house with. Fuel oil up 59%. These bug me, right? Maybe it's because I'm a Northeasterner, grew up here, but I know how cold it gets in the winter. Firewood up 35%. And I know people need heat for their homes and they're paying this much more. Look, their salaries are not going up 35% or 59% or 28%, plus the cost of food. Eggs up almost 12%, steak up 24%, bacon up 20%, prime rib up like 90%. So there you go. For just in time for Christmas. Look, your turkey's going to cost more this Thanksgiving. All of these costs are going up. And that's just the reality. And yet they're trying to explain everything away. I mean, some of the talking heads still on the cable news shows from the left are trying to say, oh, it's still just temporary. It's still just transitory. I'm sorry, guys. You know what? It's insulting to us that you keep saying that. It really is. And the other thing I would just add is that at this point, prices don't go down. When a manufacturer like a cereal company decides it's going to charge more, cereal prices, by the way, are also higher, more for their cereal, they're not going to turn around next month and lower the costs. If anything, they're going to benefit from that because they'll be like, okay, we have more pricing power right now, and they love pricing power. It increases their margins. And so what's going to happen to all the people that need to pay their bills, and yet their salaries are not going up? I mean, maybe salaries will go up, but they're not going to go up, as I said, 59% to cover the fuel heating costs this winter. So real wages are down, but the media loves to play it like they do. And while I do give some folks credit for calling it as it is, the majority of people out there in the media are still trying to explain it away. And Washington Post had a piece that it ran yesterday talking about how inflation is different now. I'm sorry, it's not different now. It's still inflation, okay? In other words, inflation hurts, which is why I keep saying to everybody, you want to be diversified. You want to look at things like gold. I've been telling you now for well over a year, buy gold because it will help you hedge out this inflation that is coming down the pike. And by the way, I think it's getting far worse before it gets better. We're looking now at 6.2% of an increase in consumer prices. I would not be surprised to see that 8% by the end of the year, or at least in the very near future, which is why I keep going back to safe havens. I do think you still want to be invested in equities. I mean, until the Fed decides it's going to go crazy on raising rates, which I think and I know, we all know that really is not going to happen in our lifetime because that's just not in their wheelhouse, so to speak. We can save that conversation for another day, but they're very, very, very reluctant to move aggressively on interest rates. So it would take a lot before we got to that. I think it's worth being in equities. I've said real estate, and I do think precious metals are really important. They're a big component of one's portfolio. Gold specifically, I've talked about $2,000 as the next stop for gold. We've already blown through 1,800, and that could come sooner than you think, only because this inflation is coming sooner than a lot of people thought. I mean, not me. I've been warning of this, sort of pounding the table on this for now a year and a half, because the handwriting is on the wall, and I suspect it's going to get far worse before it gets better. And the pain and the medicine that we're going to have to take, we're not going to like. But I look for ways for you to still benefit in that environment. And one of those ways is through gold. So take a look at gold. Call my friends over at Legacy Precious Metals. They've been in business a long time. They'll take very good care of you. Just use my name, say Trish sent you, and have them help you through different products. I mean, there are things that you can use, like a gold-backed IRA. Or actually, I mean, if you want the physical stuff right there in your home, you can have that too. Or in a safe deposit box somewhere. So they can walk you through all those options and help get you the best pricing and logistically help you through some of these strategies, which is important. You can go and download their guide. They've got a free investing guide. Go to legacypminvestments.com. Again, that's legacypminvestments.com, or give them a ring. 1-866-589-0560, 1-866-589-0560. But to me, this is one of these no-brainer investments. You want to hold 5% or so of your portfolio for the long term in something like gold. It's just smart investing. If the Democrats were smart, they wouldn't be in this position to begin with. And I wouldn't be sitting here telling you inflation is a problem. In fact, there was a time where I can remember we couldn't seem to get any inflation in our economy. Gosh, how times have changed, right? But they're not that smart. They don't have the most brilliant economists sitting around the room, and consequently, it's on Biden now. I mean, I get that Ron Klain and others want to blame Trump, but you know what? Americans aren't buying that. Americans, they get it, and that's why 59% of the country now is disapproving of the job that Joe Biden is doing. Think about that. I mean, we haven't really in modern history seen anything like that, a 59% disapproval rating. I mean, you got to go back to the days after January 6th to get even close to that. I believe it was like 57.5%, according to 538.com, disapproval rating for then President Trump. So people now are more frustrated with Biden. And I suspect it's because they kind of hoped that this guy would be more middle of the road and he would bring us together and we'd be through all this nonsense. Instead, it's like the nonsense just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And the bias from the media keeps getting worse, and people keep seeing through it, and people are tired of it. So yes, he's got a 59% disapproval rating, and I think it's going to get increasingly challenging for him. I don't know what their plan is. I mean, they have no plan. Kamala Harris was supposed to be their plan. And poor Kamala, She just can't pull it together. That's been quite obvious over and over again. You think about the challenges she's had at the border. You think about, well, just some of her antics, so to speak, that just don't play well in Peoria, as they say. Look, I mean, I think Americans, we tend as a population to have very little appreciation for fake accents, right? There's like nothing that gets under American skin more than the fake accents. Remember Hillary Clinton, all the fake Southern accents? I mean, it really, really, really turns people off. It just does. And when, you don't sound authentic, you don't sound like you understand where you came from, that's bothersome, really bothersome to Americans, which is why this little number over there in France doesn't sit so well. And people are like, what is she talking about? What is this French accent, this fake French accent about Le Plan? Here we go.
With us in government, we campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P, the plan. And then the environment is such that we're expected to defend the plan. Even when the first time we roll it out, there may be some glitches and it's time to reevaluate and then do it again.
Yeah. Okay, so people are laughing about that. Understandably, and I realize it's tough for her. It's hard for her to catch a break, but she just keeps stepping in it over and over and over again. And people don't really want to like her. Think about that. Like there's something kind of unlikable, and people say, oh, it's because she's a woman. I'm sorry, it's not because she's a woman. No, it really isn't. I think there's been plenty of women in politics that have had more in the way of likability, but there's something that's just kind of like, I know better. You get that sense from her, right? And I go back to, and maybe, I have my own biases because I remember her during the Kavanaugh hearings and how vicious the politicized attack was from her on him. And then you think about a job that just has not been well done. Frankly, has not been well done from her. The border is her domain. She still has not actually gone to the actual border, right? I mean, it's really just an abomination how poorly this has all been rolled out. And you could blame her handlers. You could blame her. I suspect it's a combination of factors. Just like Joe Biden, you could blame him. You could blame his handlers. We're all sitting here going, well, who's really in charge? Like, who's really running the government right now? Because, poor Joe Biden looks like he's over there at G20 falling asleep. So we don't really know. I suspect there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, for both her and for him. But, nonetheless, the buck stops at him, as he likes to say. The buck stops at her. They are the politicians in charge, and they should take ownership and they should take responsibility. And I think America would appreciate that. I think America would very much appreciate that. Anyway, it's wonderful to have you here, as always. I would encourage you to sign up for the podcast. You can do that on Apple iTunes. You can do that actually as well on Spotify or anywhere that you get your podcast. You can also make sure that you subscribe to the channel on Rumble and on YouTube. And of course, I will be back with you here again tomorrow. In the meantime, go check out my website, trishintel.com. By the way, we get lots of neat things. I'm actually wearing one of the jackets today from the Trish Regan store, the trishregan.store. You can check that out as well. But again, wonderful to have you here. We've got such an important time ahead. So stay tuned. I'll see you tomorrow.